everybody. Welcome and thanks for joining us today. This presentation will be recorded, so please mute yourself or turn your camera off. And at the end of this session, we'll have some time to go over any questions or concerns you may have. This visa and PDO is for Rome Start students that will be going to the Rome Center for academic year 25-26. So again, all of these slides will be made available to you early next week. So with that being said, I'd like to do some staff introductions. First, my name's Alana Carroll. I am the Study Abroad Coordinator for the Rome Center. I handle most things in regards to the post-acceptance side of the timeline. So when you're working through your student visas, you are going to be working with me. In addition to that, we have Marley Stein, our Director of Study Abroad, and then we have Abby Linneman and Adam Schilling. They are the Rome Center Assistant Directors for Recruitment. And then on our call today is also Joe Serdar. He has been working with you on the early end of this application process and admission to Loyola. I'd like to kind of go over some of our orientation overview for today. We are hoping that you will, have an overview of understanding the visa process, a little bit about cultural adaptation and identities abroad, health, safety, and wellness abroad, getting more familiar with the Rome Center campus, and then talking about academics, course registration, and then lastly, tips, preparation, and next steps. The goals for today is just recognizing what cultural adaptation and how it may intersect with your identities while you're abroad, understanding health and safety resources available to you while you're abroad, and then just feeling prepared for your study abroad program in Rome. So I'd like to go over the student visas. That's really important to many of you because that's the first huge step in getting closer to going to the Rome Center. So all students must have a passport to obtain a student visa. So if you do not currently have a passport that's valid at least 6 months beyond the end of the program date, please make sure that you are in the renewal or registration process immediately. And so we do have a link here. And as I mentioned, those slides will go out to you, so you can always access these later, but you should have a valid passport. In addition to that, with the student visas, students without a valid Italian or European Union passport will need to acquire a student visa for that academic year. If you are an EU citizen, as long as you have an unexpired passport and it's valid for that 6 months, you can study in Italy without a student visa. Make sure if you do have an EU passport and you intend on using that to let our office know so that we can mark that off appropriately in your Go Global application. And if you hold citizenship that's not an EU or it's other than the US, please reach out to Rome at luc.edu or myself, and we can assist you further on those next steps for obtaining a student visa. The student visa appointments. As of January 2025, all visa applicants need to appear in person for an interview and for the collection of their biometrics, which is fingerprints. And a photograph is also collected at an Italian consulate. You must schedule that in-person appointment with the Consulate General of Italy. And all students are eligible to use the Chicago consulate. Since you will be Loyola students, your home institution is here in Chicago, and you can utilize that consulate. Just be aware that if you do use the Chicago consulate, in that you may have to do some travel depending upon where you live in and such. You also may be eligible for other jurisdictions, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. There's a link here at the bottom of the slide that talks about consulates in their jurisdiction. So if you live in a different state, you may also be eligible to go for that in-person appointment elsewhere. So like if you live in Michigan, you may be eligible to you'll be eligible for the Detroit consulate. So you may have options there. So we want to make sure that you're looking at that link for those jurisdictions. That study visa appointment system, you have to book, as I mentioned, an in-person appointment, and you're going to use the software system that the Italian government has, which is called Prenota at Me website. And so we have that linked in here. As I mentioned earlier, if you do not live in the Chicago area and you do want to use that Chicago consulate, you may have to do some travel for that. And then all interviews you'll be required to produce your application along with other documentation, and we'll go through that process here shortly. So scheduling your appointment, as I mentioned, you're going to use that Prenota website. You should be looking at that platform. You need to register your account first, designate which consulate you're going to use, and then Denise, can you mute yourself, please? Thank you. We're just getting some background noise. Thank you. All right. And then those appointments can be made now. So register those accounts, book an appointment. The very last day to do those appointments is July 27th. You should not be booking an appointment farther than that. If you are having a hard time and it's getting close to that time frame, let me know so that we can, kind of work with you on that. And if there are some difficulties trying to find appointments, my biggest suggestion to you is to continue to look daily. Because many students are flooding into the system from all over the country because of the new requirements for that in-person appointment, those appointments may be tight. So look daily, and we always tell students for Central Standard Time to look at 5 p.m. That's midnight time in Italy. And so that's when those appointments are made available if there's any that have been canceled or additional appointments that come up. And just be mindful, as we mentioned here, that you can only have one account at a time. So if you are registered for the Chicago and you are lucky enough to have options to the Detroit one as well, or any other one in which your jurisdiction falls under, you have to designate one and you'd have to cancel that designation to look for an appointment at another consulate. So be mindful of that. And as I mentioned earlier, if you need help throughout this whole process, it is a bit daunting, feel free to reach out to me and I am happy to walk you through all these steps. So this is what it visually will look like when you're registering an account through Prenota. You're going to register your account and you're going to access that Prenota. And I like to give some visuals that you can reflect on when you get this slide deck later on. You'll book the appointment and then you will go for a national visa. That's the type of visa appointment as you see here. And then you will do an individual booking. Make sure you mark off the privacy policy and go forward on that, and it will then produce a calendar that will show you the open appointments with a key here. You'll notice that the green means that they have openings for those days, and the red means that they are fully booked. These are some additional pop-up and windows in which they'll give you information. Sometimes when you book the appointment, you may not necessarily have it confirmed. You have to typically go back into the system, usually about 10 to 3 days prior to your appointment to confirm it. And so we walk you through those steps too on these slides on how to do that. In addition, what documents will you need for that student visa appointment? There are some basic documents, and they are the same for all the Italian consulates in the USA. However, some of them have some varied requirements. So the burden falls on you to make sure that you're looking at the consulate that your jurisdiction falls under and understanding what those additional requirements or documents may be. And again, I can help you with that as well. So feel free to reach out to me. Always check the consulate page for those list of documents because those can vary and we may not know what they are or what the changes are. So I always am saying that they are the source of truth, that consulate page. And then once you have all your various documents assembled, you're going to bring them with you to to your appointment. I always tell students have these prepared early enough. Some students get worried because they don't have an appointment and they wait. I would recommend knowing what consulate you're going to go to, trying to schedule or book that appointment. In the meantime, if you're having difficulties getting an appointment, collect all the documents you need so that when you do get an appointment, you are able to go right away, that you'll have everything ready to go. So, another thing that I always like to point out to students is that when you go for these appointments, you are giving them your physical passport. And so you cannot travel internationally while they are processing your paperwork. So be very mindful of that. So if you are having any sort of travel plans over the summer, you may have to rearrange them. You may have to make some other accommodations. So be mindful of that when you're in this process. So the responsibility that you as a student need to do as far as the student visas, one, you need to purchase your round trip flight to Italy. For you as Rome Start students, you do not need to do a round trip. You just need one flight into the country because you're staying for a year. Now, yes, you will be coming home during the holidays and you can put that down, but the requirement for the student visa is only for coming into the country. So make sure that you are looking at flights and booking those. I always recommend that students do refundable or changeable flights when you're looking at that because life throws some crazy curves at you and you may have to make adjustments. So you don't want to be absorbing some high cost should you have to change or get a refund on your tickets. But we need you to purchase and upload those flight itineraries into your Go Global in order for our office to generate what we call the acceptance and insurance letters. And those are documents needed in that collection of everything for those student visa appointments. So our office needs about 5 business days to do that. So please make sure that you are looking and purchasing your flights sooner versus later and uploading that into your Go Global application into the portal. Um, and then if you need some guidance as to when to book a flight, take a look at that Rome Center academic calendar for 2025. Your arrival in Rome is on August 27th, so most students depart the United States on August 26th and arrive on the 27th. But again, take a look at that calendar and it can help guide you. So the document checklist, you are going to need to print and fill out the visa application form for your respective consulate. Again, if you're using Chicago, it's going to say Chicago at the top of that application. If you're using San Francisco, it may say San Francisco, New York, etc. So make sure you are printing and filling out the appropriate visa application. And that visa application is the visa application form for long-term stay, which is 91 to 365 days. Also, make sure that you have a passport size photograph that you are going to be attaching to your visa application. You can go to a CVS or a Walgreens. You may have recently redid your passport and you might have an extra. So be mindful of that. You will need it for the application. In addition to that, as I mentioned earlier, you are going to be giving them your physical passport plus one copy of your passport. So make sure that you provide that in your stack of documents. Another item that you're going to have on your checklist is a driver's license or state ID. This proves the jurisdiction that you're able to go to. So as I mentioned, if you live in Michigan and you are utilizing the Detroit consulate, you're going to want to print out a copy of your Michigan driver's license. It shows proof that you're allowed to go to that jurisdiction. If you are going to the Chicago consulate, you may need to do a copy of your Loyola ID if you already have that. That shows that you have jurisdiction to Chicago as well. And then, as I mentioned earlier, the other one is the study abroad insurance and acceptance letter. Again, that's organized through our office, and we do that after you have answered and uploaded your flight itinerary into your Go Global portal. Another item off of the study visa document checklist is proof of financial means. This is either going to be in two forms, and this is all based off of the Chicago consulate. So again, it may vary slightly depending upon which consulate you're using, but I can assist you if you have questions about that. But based off of the Chicago one, they indicate that they want $1,000 per month of stay. So for you as Rome Start students, that comes to about $9,000 because semester is about 4,500. So you double that up, which is 9,000. So you have to have that in a bank account, and that needs to be an ending balance. So if you're going to do bank statements, they must be 3 recent bank statements, and the most recent one has to have that ending balance of $9,000. So you can do it either that way as a bank statement or a letter from a U.S. banking institution indicating your account balance, that ending balance. And so you have two options to do the statements or the letter. Sometimes students may have parents or guardians transfer funds into their account so that they get to that balance, that minimum balance, which is fine. Or a parent may do what's called an affidavit of support, in which they vouch that they'll be the bank per se for the student. If that's the case, then the parents must produce those bank statements or a letter. From their banking institution, along with what we call an affidavit of support. It's a document in which they need to fill out, and they have to have their signature witnessed by what's called a notary. And typically, banks have notaries on hand. And again, I can walk you through all this if this is a little confusing or it's a bit much now, but those are some of those options that you can do. In addition to that, if you're receiving any financial aid, you may want to, you should reach out to LUFinaid at luc.edu and request that they produce for you a financial aid award letter. So if you need that as part of your funding to show that you have proof for funding for the program, you can do a combination of the bank statements and that as well. Um, and as I mentioned again and again, the flights in and out of Italy, not only do I need it in order to produce those letters, but the Italian government also needs to see when you are flying into and out of their country. And so there are questions on that student visa application form in which they are checking what you filled out there with your actual printout of your itinerary. And so you want to make sure that those match. So important reminders in regards to this. The consulate, the Chicago consulate, only it has a fee for processing all your paperwork. And so they only accept money orders or cashier's check. And those are things that you can obtain from a bank, you can obtain from a currency exchange. I think even a 7-Eleven will generate a money order, but it's basically guaranteed funds. So you would have to provide them money for the fee, and that'll be on the consulate's website page, what that counselor fee, that application fee is. Um, and then provide some additional funds for the processing of a cashier's check or a money order. And so that can fluctuate. So we always say that you should be checking the website for that information. And then if you are unable to pick up your student visa from the consulate in person, I do recommend going in person to pick it up. It's a little bit safer. But if you're unable to do that, you will have to provide them with a return envelope that has a tracking number. And then I recommend using FedEx or UPS for that. So you'll have to provide that for them. You'll also need to fill that out. So it'll have to be self-addressed, it's going to have to be prepaid, and it's going to have a tracking number. And you will provide that in your stack of documents. And that's only if you're unable to go back in person to pick it up. In addition to that, if you are going to have them mail it back to you, you're going to have to do what's called a consent to send by mail. It's a form in which you have to fill out and provide again in your stack of documents, indicating that the Italian government is not responsible should your passport be lost, stolen, or damaged. So these are all reminders in regards to the documents you need to produce for that student visa process. I always like to give a little visual aid about a money order, what I just mentioned earlier. This is what a money order looks like from the post office, and this is how you'll fill it out. So this is a great way to kind of give you a guide as to what that looks like and how to fill it out. Just be mindful, you cannot do redaction tape or whiteout. If you make a mistake, it makes that money order void, it voids it out. So make sure you're very careful when you're filling it out. And then this is the address for the Consulate General in Chicago if you're going here. And then these are some of the links to those visa checklist study points, also to the fees, and also for their contact information. So again, here's also some important documents that I just referenced. They're here as well. This is that blank affidavit of support that I mentioned earlier. So if a parent is providing that financial support, this is the form here. Here's that consent to send by mail. This is a template for how to fill out that visa application form. When you click on that, it's going to look a little overwhelming because there's lots of questions. Well, we provide a template on how to answer those questions. And so we recommend that you review that and make sure that you fill it out per our template. And then if you have any financial aid questions, as I mentioned, you should be addressing those to lufinade@luc.edu. So again, I'm here to help you through this process. It's a lot of information. So you can set up an appointment with me via Navigate or in Zoom, or if you're having troubles with either of them, just reach out to me via email. My email address will be listed here later on in the slide presentation, but it's acarol8@luc.edu, and it's 2 R's, 2 L's. And now I'm going to pass it over to Marley Stein for cultural adaptation.
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Alana, for getting everybody started on what can be the most complicated part, but it won't be complicated with Alana's help on the visa. Alana, can you add your booking link as well into the chat? That
Yeah,
might be
yeah,
helpful for
absolutely.
our newly admitted Rome students. All right, so I'm going to get started on cultural adaptation and cultural misunderstandings. This is an overview of what we will be discussing today. So we'll start with cultural adaptation and cultural misunderstandings, and then move forward to understanding the multiple phases of cultural adaptation, and then finish with tips for managing cultural adaptation and building intercultural competence.
All right.
So can everybody take a moment and put in the chat what your definition of culture might be? Alana, can you go back a slide?
Sure.
Yep. So what is culture to you? Everybody has a different definition of it. There are academic definitions of culture. Your definition of culture is often influenced by the own environment that you might have grown up in or been exposed to, or multiple different cultures and environments you've been exposed to. So if everybody could take a moment just so we can have a starting point of how everybody views culture, or how everybody might define culture, and put that in the chat, that would be really helpful. Bonus points for my colleagues if they want to get us started. What makes someone from where they come from? Yes, exactly. Culture is kind of how you define the group or an identity. Yeah, ways of living for various people. Anybody else? All right, we can move on, and I can give an example of one definition of culture. So culture is defined as the shared patterns of behaviors and interactions, cognitive constructs, so the way we think about things, and effective understanding that are learned through a process of socialization. These patterns identify the members of a culture group and also distinguish those of another group. So it's a way of distinguishing one group from another. It's commonalities and shared patterns of behaviors and interactions, shared patterns of thinking, shared patterns of living, some of you mentioned, and shared patterns of socialization. Same views and beliefs. Yes, common views and beliefs. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's heterogeneous or completely the same across one given culture, but yes, similar views and beliefs based on their environment. Next. So this is a website that will give a lot more detail on comparing Italy versus the United States. This is the Culture Factors Country Comparison Tool. It's based on Hofstede's theories. And so this tool allows you to compare different cultural components of Italian culture versus United States culture, and see what the differences are and how they might approach various elements of culture. If you have another identity, maybe you have your parents are from a different country, or you've grown up in various communities, you can actually pick different countries as well to combine with Italy and the United States. So you can see how your own identity and your own nationalities and backgrounds might influence the differences in culture and how some of these elements are viewed from the Italian perspective, United States perspective, and then any other culture that you'd like to add in here. But to get started, I did want to share some of these differences here. So one that you can see is uncertainty avoidance. You can see that Italy has a very, actually, I think these are backwards, but has a very high level of uncertainty avoidance. So that means that they are more likely to directly address the situation than maybe in the US. The US has a lot of cultural influences from Anglo culture from the UK. And so we are less likely to address certain things. And so we're going to be more avoidant in addressing conflict or misunderstandings, where in Italy, you might find that if there's something that is a misunderstanding, they're going to directly address it. In terms of individualism, the United States has a much higher, not much higher, but significantly higher focus on the individual versus collective. This individualism you also view differs from regions in Italy as well and regions in the US. So in the South, they tend to be more collectivist in their way of thinking, and in Rome, it's a little bit more individualistic. And then indulgence is the other one you see here that is very different between the US and Italy. The US, it can be more wasteful, a little bit less focused on sustainability, recycling. The US can be a little bit more materialistic, a little bit more indulgent in their lifestyle. And in Italy, you'll see it's much lower. They're more conscious about the environment, about the world around them, their impact on their community. They're a little bit less materialistic, a little bit less indulgent. They prioritize taking care of the environment around them. And so you can kind of see that difference here as you begin to have conversations with locals before and while abroad as well. So cultural differences, this is the classic iceberg. Maybe some of you have seen this in your high school classes thus far. You'll see on the top, there are elements that are visible elements of culture. And on the bottom, there are elements that are maybe invisible to your day-to-day in your day-to-day interactions or when looking around you in a new environment. So things that are on the surface culture, visible culture, you'll see our food, dress, music, visual arts, dance, literature, language, celebrations, and then deep culture are things that are less visible. So this is going to be the tempo of work, concepts of time, concepts of self, courtesy, personal space, attitudes towards different genders, preference for competition versus cooperation, body language, though I would say in Italy, body language and nonverbal cues are more in the visible culture section, eye contact. And so here you can see that some of the examples that just come to mind are personal space. Italians are much closer talkers. They speak with their hands a lot more. They use gestures. And so that's an element of culture that you'll encounter. The concept of time, you'll be at a US university abroad in Italy. So you still need to be on time for your classes and punctual and attending all the things that you're required to attend. But you will find that when engaging with locals or planning events outside of the classroom, people may be later, and that's not considered rude. It's just part of their concept of time as well. So I'll continue on. So cultural adaptation, this is the long-term process of adjusting to and finally feeling comfortable in a new environment. You all, as Rome Start students who will be there for a full academic year, are going to have a very different experience in terms of cultural adaptation than some of your peers that may only be going for a semester. And also you have the very fortunate opportunity to really immerse yourself and become one with your new environment because you will be there a full year. So cultural misunderstandings or bumps are misunderstandings that will happen along the way as you move towards cultural adaptation. So a cultural bump occurs when a person has expectations of a particular behavior and gets something different when interacting with individuals from another culture. When there are miscommunications due to a different cultural norm, or if there's a language barrier, you can have a miscommunication or cultural bump. Learning opportunities also can come from these misunderstandings or these cultural bumps, and also linguistic growth can come from these misunderstandings or cultural bumps. One thing that you are fortunate is that you're going to an environment that is very safe. It's very supportive. It's very similar to the cultural experience that you've had in maybe your high schools. And you're going to be navigating two different cultural adjustments simultaneously. So you're going to be adjusting to life in a new country, but you're also going to be adjusting to life at a university for the first time, many of you. And so this is an opportunity to learn, but you are in a complex situation where you're navigating to two different learning environments, two new and different learning environments simultaneously. And while the Rome Center is very similar to what you're used to, it is in a different country and there are minor differences. So be prepared with your expectations to be open-minded to those differences that you might encounter that may or may not reflect in cultural bumps or cultural misunderstandings. So this is an example of the cultural adaptation wave. This is pretty basic, up, down, what you might be used to when you hear the term cultural adaptation. This is what a journey may look like for some of you, and I'll show some other representations momentarily. Honeymoon phase is right when you first get there. This is something that you will feel just for adjusting to the college lifestyle as well, even though it'll be very different than what some of your peers here in the US might be experiencing. There will be common similarities. So when you arrive, you're going to be very positive, curious. You might think that everything abroad is so much better. You might be talking to your high school friends who went to the US universities directly, and you might think, oh, my lifestyle, my world is better. I made the right choice. You might idealize the local culture, the Italian culture over US culture for university. And so the food tastes better, everything's new, and you look at everything with a positive light. Then as time goes on, you might start to feel that what is different is inferior. Maybe the host culture is confusing or the systems are frustrating. You might be homesick. And at this point, you're going to feel feelings of frustrations. Maybe you're having trouble communicating with your professor, or maybe you're having trouble communicating with the locals around you. That's going to bring about feelings of frustration. And you might start to view the host culture as less ideal than you did in the honeymoon phase. Time will go on, and this low will not last. You're going to move into an acceptance phase where you're going to feel more relaxed and more balanced in your view of your local environment and the environment of studying abroad for your first year of university experience. You'll feel more relaxed. You'll have a more balanced, objective view of your experience. Some things will make sense to you, and you'll feel like you want to adapt those. Other things, you might prefer the US approach to things, but you'll have a more open mind about how to incorporate those into your daily life while abroad. This is a more true to life representation of the ups and downs of cultural adaptation. It's not going to be this perfect curve. As you can see in each of these sections, there'll be ups, there'll be downs, but eventually you'll make your way through the adaptation phase. That's a steady uphill adaptation. And then when you do return back to the US, there are resources here on campus as well to help you with your reentry. You'll probably experience a second wave of cultural adaptation and or what many refer to as culture shock when you return to the US. But having gone through it abroad first, you'll be more prepared for the reentry experience here at Loyola. The other thing I want to mention is that everybody's experience looks different. So some of you might have had international experiences before. Some of you might come from multiple heritage backgrounds, and it'll look differently depending on your past experiences, depending on your personality, your ways of handling stress. So please be mindful that if you are comparing or leaning on others for support, that everybody's experience will be unique to them. And you should be mindful to not let others influence what you're experiencing as well, but you can lean on each other for support. So having the strength and knowing that everybody is going through a similar experience, just different and unique to them. We're gonna skip through the discussion questions just because we're a little bit tight on time. I'm gonna move forward and talk a little bit about building resiliency and cultural preparation. After this presentation, we are going to send out the recording of this presentation, so you have all of these resources to review, but also we'll be sending out a recording from the Wellness Center, who and one of our colleagues there will talk about ways to manage stress, the types of stress you might encounter there as well. To start, there is some tools that you can all look inward to build resiliency. So the more resilient you are, the more smooth your cultural adaptation will go on site. So some of these include self-awareness, connection, flexible thinking, self-regulation, and optimism. Self-awareness is a core factor in resilient people. It refers to just knowing yourself, your emotions, your thoughts, and behaviors. And the more self-aware you are, the more you're going to be able to know how you might respond to stressful situations you'll encounter abroad. Feeling alone is one of the primary concerns for those students traveling abroad. So connecting with one another. You're a smaller cohort as the Rome Start students. So having that really strong group connection is going to be very essential to navigating the ups and downs of cultural adaptation, the ups and downs of adapting to university life abroad. But there's also other ways you can connect. You can connect with communities abroad that might be that you might belong to based on some of your identities, maybe a religious group, maybe groups that support LGBTQIA or certain ethnic groups that you would like to connect with. It's also a really nice way to connect with the local culture because there are local students and locals like you who also are part of these affinity groups, and connecting with them will help you navigate some of these differences that might be new to you. Flexible thinking. So rigid ways of thinking gives us less choice in our behaviors, going in with an open mind that things are going to change, that what's scheduled is going to change, what courses you might have initially planned to take, you might decide to change. So going in knowing that the way you're planning might not necessarily be how things happen. Self-regulation. So knowing that if there is a stressful situation, what do you typically turn to regulate your emotions, your feelings, your stress? So these can be any of the ones I just mentioned so far, but it also can be things like going for a run, if you're used to running daily, exercising, meditating, taking 10 minutes to journal every day, calling a family member to help you, or maintaining your regular mental health support practices that you do here in the US, abroad as well. And then lastly, optimism. An optimistic attitude helps promote psychological well-being. So some students look at this with the glass half full or half empty. So looking at things with from a glass half full perspective is going to improve mood and help you understand what is and isn't within your control. So everybody is going to come to this experience with their own unique backgrounds, their own identities. And so navigating identities abroad can be difficult. So before you go, it's important to reflect on your own personal identities and understand while abroad if you'll be part of any majority or minority groups while abroad. So knowing what the demographics of Italy might be is a helpful thing to research. And then, as I mentioned just a moment ago, researching local community groups associated with your identities. This is a great way to meet locals that share similar interests and values that can also provide you insight and support as you're navigating your identity and what that looks like abroad. One thing to be mindful of is that different cultures have different perspectives regarding different identities. So do your research ahead of time to know what to expect. In addition to that, different cultures have different perspectives and different ways of communicating about various identities. And that can be particularly overwhelming or jarring to US students when they go abroad, because it's very different than how identities are discussed in the classroom or out of the classroom here in the US. If you encounter microaggressions, racism, or harassment while abroad, inform your on-site program staff and the study abroad office. So you'll want to inform the Rome Center staff, the student life staff. It can be anybody that you feel comfortable with. But then in addition to that, you'll want to let the study abroad office know so that we can support you in navigating those experiences of microaggressions, racism, or harassment. I'll move on. So the Office of Equity and Compliance is the office that handles these reports in a more formal capacity. So if you experience microaggressions, racism, or any sort of form of discrimination, you'll want to report this to the Office of Equity and Compliance, and they will launch, if you choose, a unbiased investigation as to the interaction, and can support you through that process and connect you with resources based on the particular incident that you might have experienced. All right, so moving into health and safety abroad. So how to stay safe while abroad. Okay, so alcohol and drugs. So the majority of injuries and illnesses on study abroad programs are related to alcohol abuse. Drug possession and use is grounds for immediate removal from the program. Breaking local laws can carry much more severe punishment than it does in the US. So this, if there's local laws related to public intoxication or drug consumption, these can carry much more severe punishment. And if you do find yourself in legal or police trouble, there's very little we can do from the study abroad office, from Loyola's perspective, to support you in that process in getting the resources you might need. So please, please, please be mindful of the local laws. Alcohol and drugs can impair judgment, especially in new, unfamiliar environments. Some of you will be 18 by the time you start the program, meaning that you can consume alcohol legally in country, but please know that it can impair judgment and that it needs to be done in moderation and respectfully. Use good judgment if you're consuming alcohol. If you are, make sure you're traveling with a group. Make sure you know where you're going ahead of time. Make sure you research where you're going ahead of time. If you do see other students or are struggling yourself with alcohol consumption while abroad or abuse, make sure that you don't stay silent. You communicate it to the on-site support services. There's a wellness center on campus, or someone in student life so that they can support you or the other students who might be experiencing some problems with alcohol abuse or consumption. Look out for one another, keep each other safe. So if you are all going to a bar or a club, make sure that if there's 5 of you going out together, 5 of you are coming home. If you do choose to engage in drinking alcohol abroad, make sure you're watching your drink, you're covering it when you're not focused on it, and that you are looking out for one another in that space as well. You are subject to LUC's community standards and code of conduct. So no alcohol is so if you break the community standards and code of conduct, that means alcohol abuse or misuse. You will have to discuss that with the SRCR office, and that would be part of your university record here as well. So whatever you do abroad is part of the Loyola, your Loyola University experience, and that will be on your record if you do violate the community standards and code of conduct. One thing to mention is that no alcohol should be consumed during program time or in program housing. Alcohol that may be consumed that's associated with classes has to be a part of the particular course you're taking in order to consume it. So that means if you take the food and wine class and you're of legal drinking age, you are able to taste test the wine. So before you go, you're going to want to discuss important health accommodations and how you will manage those abroad by visiting your physician. You are not required to fill out a health and safety questionnaire. You are not required to visit your physician, but it is in your own best interest to visit a physician. At that meeting, you're going to want to discuss your medical conditions, including mental health, and how you plan to manage these abroad. Come up with a plan about how you're going to access any prescriptions you might need, how you're going to receive ongoing care, be that mental health counseling or telehealth, things like that, or it could be working with an in-country provider to get the physical or mental health support that you need. Discuss prescriptions and ensure you have enough to sustain you. 1 year might be hard to get all the prescriptions you need, so it might have to be a 6-month thing. If you do travel with all of your prescriptions, make sure that you have the medical name of those prescriptions in case you need to try to get those while abroad if you don't have enough that you're going with you. Travel with your travel with your prescription. So that can either be the prescription that's listed on the bottle or a separate prescription from your doctor, so that if you are questioned at the border control, you have the information you need. Obtain any necessary immunizations. You can see which ones you would be required to need by consulting the CDC website. They have a country profile for every single country, and there's one for Italy as well. So another way to stay safe abroad is to do your research, review pre-departure material, stay connected, stay updated on health conditions in Italy. We're a little bit past the COVID-19 restrictions, but there are always community guidance on various airborne illnesses. So just make sure you're up to date on that. Learn about medications that may be restricted or illegal. Again, that is on the CDC website. It'll list which prescriptions will need like a listed prescription from your doctor while you're traveling, and which ones may be restricted or illegal. Along those lines as well, you are going for a year, so it is difficult to get the full dosage of something you might need for the full time. If you can't, there are ways to obtain it in country via our CISI insurance, which Alana will elaborate on momentarily. However, your best, most streamlined, easiest method is to bring whatever you need with you. And that might require you reaching out to your local insurance, your US insurance, to get an override or something like that. So just be prepared for that. All of that can be discussed with your physician when you meet with them. And then lastly, research socio-political climate and other safety matters. Here are some resources: the Department of State, travel advisories. So it gives health and safety guidance by each country, your exit and entry requirements, and then country-specific health and safety information. These are some general common sense safety abroad tips that you can all take into account when abroad. Always lock your doors and windows in housing. Do not carry large amounts of cash. Petty theft and robberies are pretty common in Italy and around Europe. So if you are walking around the city, make sure you're careful with your phone and other high value items. I know in the US, people are connected. It's part of a third arm for them, their cell phone. If you are traveling about the city, make sure you keep your phone hidden and you look up how to get places beforehand so you're not dependent on GPS. Do not buy, consume, or sell drugs. Again, that goes to the point of local laws apply. Do not drink in excess or accept drinks from strangers. Avoid public demonstrations. Activism is important, but public demonstrations or protests could easily turn from peaceful to violent quite quickly. And if something were to happen, we might not be able to support you in the fully if you violate any local laws related to a public demonstration. So if you are concerned about a topic that is happening in your local community or in Italy, please talk to your on-site staff about that, and they can give you ways to engage in discourse around these particular activist topics. Never walk home alone or accept a ride from a stranger. Travel in groups and look out for one another. Walk with a purpose. Be aware of traffic patterns. Traffic incidents are also very common in Italy. They have narrow streets, and pedestrians are sometimes needing to jump to the side of the road when a car is passing. I'm from the Midwest, and so I've grown up swimming in lakes and not oceans. So if you do travel throughout Italy or Europe and you are wanting to swim in in a body of water that is much larger. Make sure you're obeying all posted warnings and signs before entering any body of water, and that there's some sort of lifeguard on duty or someone looking out for you. And only swim up to your own ability level as well. Accommodation requests. This is a concept that might be new to some of you. We have a study abroad accessibility center here, or sorry, oh my goodness, a student accessibility center here at Loyola, and that applies to study abroad. They can support you in any accessibility needs that you might have. Once you apply for an accommodation request directly with the SAC, you'll be assigned an advisor or a case manager that will put together an accommodation plan for you while abroad. Since the Rome Center is part of Loyola University Chicago, they will send with your permission, any accommodation letters that are needed for classroom or housing or experiential learning activities directly to the professor who will be teaching that class, and then also to the head of academics and student life. If you are requesting a housing accommodation, you will need to do that in Mercury as well as through the SAC by April 15th so that those can be accommodated for you. You're past that, so please just do those by April 30th or ASAP, because that will make it more likely for your accommodation to be facilitated. There are some on-site mental health resources. The Wellness Center in Rome, we have the availability there. You are all fortunate that there is a psychologist and psychotherapist on staff with counseling availability. There's also a psychiatrist and psychologist that you can be referred to for further ongoing care. These are some emergency resources and procedures. You'll get a lot more of this information on site in Rome. These are the emergency life team that you can contact. On the back of your CISI insurance card, there is an AXA emergency phone number who will assist in coordinating healthcare for you. So that might be telling you the local hospital, getting you to a clinic quickly. There's the LUC emergency phone number, which is the same one that everybody utilizes here on campus. That will route to me in the event of an emergency. There's also a doctor on call 24/7. It's rare in the US that you can contact a doctor as easily as you can at the Rome Center. So this is a huge benefit to your own well-being. And then there's also the 24/7 Rome Center reception desk who can route you to the right person. The local emergency number is 112. Yeah, I'll go on to the next slide. So this is step by step in how to respond to various incidents you might encounter abroad. Like I said, if it's a minor injury or illness, if you feel sick, see the on-campus nurse. If the nurse is not on campus, you can speak with Dr. Guerrero 24/7 via phone, text, or WhatsApp. He is the physician that works with the Rome Center. If you have an in-person appointment, you might be required to submit the invoice to CISI, which is our insurance provider, for reimbursement and pay out of pocket, or there are some situations where it is a direct billing agreement. If you need more specialized care, you have access to our CISI insurance network, where you can search for a preferred or not preferred provider. Those terms do not mean that one of the providers are better or worse, just one allows for direct claim payments from CISI, and the other you will pay out of pocket and get reimbursed, which is the non-preferred provider option. Be prepared because you may have to pay out of pocket as well. If it's a major illness or injury, do not call the Loyola emergency number. I am so far removed from what is happening on campus. I can provide consultation for follow-up or help get in contact with your emergency contacts, but I will not be as helpful as I would love to be to you on site when something is happening. So if you have a medical emergency, seek help without delay, call that 112 number, contact the student life emergency phone, and they can go along with you to see Dr. Guerrero or help you make an informed decision. And then you also have the AXA assistance number, which is on the back of your CISI insurance card to open a case.
Okay, great. Thanks, Marley. I'm going to now talk about our app downloads and registrations. We understand that these may feel a little overwhelming because there's quite a few that you're going to have to download and a couple that you're going to have to do registrations. However, please keep in mind that each one of these are designed with your safety and convenience in mind. And so that's why we highlight these in the presentation and they are required. So we appreciate your guidance and patience as we go through these. So, first, let's talk about we're going to have a couple here. These are the mandatory apps and registration. They are listed in your Go Global application and they are requirements. The first one is the Alert Traveler app. This is a risk management tool. I'll talk a little bit more about each of these in the following slides, but I just want to give you kind of a high level understanding of what each of them does. The next one is the STEP registration. It is a US government service for travel updates. So it does provide you updates for the country that you'll be in. And then the third one is the MFA and Microsoft Authenticator app. This is provided, it provides you access to Loyola's software systems. So we want to make sure that you have this set up appropriately before your departure to Rome. And especially we want to make sure that you are doing that MFA with the Microsoft Authenticator app that makes it easier when you are in Rome itself. And I'll explain that a little bit further. The next one is an app called Telegram Messenger. This is an app that is used by our Rome staff in Italy for communication with the students. So it's important that you download that Telegram Messenger app before your departure. We'll also discuss the CISI app, and I'll chat a little bit more about that later. And that is based off of your itinerary record and geolocations that you can opt into. But we'll get into that a little bit further. So, with the Alert Traveler, just kind of a big overview of that. It's a risk management app, as I mentioned, and it provides you real-time safety alerts based off of your itinerary record in Italy, or your last known GPS location, or the countries that you subscribe to. So, there's lots of options with this app. Like I said, it's going to be connected to your itinerary in Italy, but you are able to, if you travel outside of Italy and outside of Rome, you are able to subscribe to those locations or those countries and cities so that you can get those real-time updates and alerts should something happen while you are in a different area. So we highly encourage you to do that. This app must be downloaded onto your mobile device that you will be using. During your program. So make sure that you do that before you depart. And then, of course, these are some common questions. You can go over this later on when you get the slide presentation. You are eligible to download that app now. And so I encourage you to do that. And then I can, of course, with any of this, help you walk you through this process. And there's some guides. There's an Alert Traveler user guide that's very helpful for you to go through. The next slide is just again, these are QR codes that can help you quickly, help you or assist you in downloading those apps based off of your phone that you have, whether it's an iPhone or an Android, and then also a QR code for that Go Global Study Abroad website so that you can go in after you've downloaded these apps and activate that Alert Traveler. So again, you can always come back to these later on when we present the slides to you via email. So let's talk a little bit more about the Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, or it's also known as STEP. This is administered by the U.S. Department of State. It's a registration. This registration provides safety and security alerts to you. It's an extra layer of security while you're abroad. So we want you to enroll in this or do this registration, I should say, before you depart. It is a requirement within your Go Global application and it's free. It only takes about 20 minutes. So make sure that you adhere to that requirement and complete that registration. The next thing I want to talk about is the multi-factor authentication, MFA, and Microsoft Authenticator app. Again, here's a QR code. Students must have that app installed onto their mobile device that you are bringing with you to Italy, and we want to make sure that you are setting that up properly. Do not opt in for text messaging. We want you to opt into that push notification on the app. That makes it easier. It's a great transition. Um, and so if your phone number changes while you're going to Italy, you need to make sure that you do this app versus the SMS text messaging, because again, it's just easier versus it's not connected to a phone number, which could be a little clunky while you're over there. And so this allows you to have access to all those Loyola systems like your Loyola email, your Locus account, and Sakai. So that's why it's really important, and we highlight this particular app because we want to make sure that you're having a smooth transition when you go over there. Next is the Telegram app that I was talking about. This is the requirement. It's a mandatory download app on your mobile device before you come to Italy. Again, this is used by our Rome Center Student Life team. And so you must sign up for this with your full name. Do not use nicknames because when they're in a situation for communication, they need to know exactly who they're talking to. So they may not know a nickname for a particular person. So make sure that you sign up with your full name, first and last name. Then let's move on to, oh, another thing that I'd like to point out to students is ETA. It's the Electronic Travel Authorization. This is important because it's fairly new. This is if you are traveling to or through the UK. You don't need ETA if you are just passing through the UK airport without going through border control, crossing over border control. And if you have any doubts, I always say check with the airlines if you're not sure. But if you are not crossing through border control, you don't need ETA. But because you are Rome Start students and you're going to be there for a year, I would encourage you at some point in that year, you're going to do some travel up into the UK, I guarantee. So I would encourage you to do this sooner versus later. It's an application, it's available, it's online. We have the links to it, and it takes about 3 days to get a response. And there's an application fee for it. It's about 13 pounds, which might be like 16 US dollars, and it's good for 2 years. So again, I know you're going to be doing some travel. You don't want to be inhibited by not doing this, and all of a sudden, last minute, a group of you decide to go up to the UK. You want to make sure you have this in place before you depart. So please explore that and make sure to do that registration and pay for that. It's very simple to do. So next I want to talk about CISI insurance. All study abroad students will have CISI international health insurance coverage for the entire time you are studying abroad. For some of you, this may be your first time managing health insurance on your own without the help of your parents or guardians. So we want to make sure that you understand, and we want to help explain some of the resources available to you while you're abroad. Marley mentioned some of this earlier, and I'm just going to highlight a few more things in relation to that. So we're going to talk about some of the costs, enrollment, and the contact information. So the cost for the CISI insurance, this is a mandatory fee. It will be billed to your Locus account, and the billing and due dates for that follow the Bursar's website by term, so you'll see that. So the cost is $300 for a semester and $200 for the summer. You all won't be there for the summer, but you will be there for a full year. So it'll be $300 for that fall semester and $300 for the spring semester. So be mindful of that. When you're looking at your e-bill, you'll see that come up on your account. And so we like to point out what that is. Enrollment. So we typically will do enrollment into the CISI plan about a month prior to your departure. If for some reason you need to have that done a little bit earlier, please reach out to me and I'm happy to do that, especially if there are some needs in regards to medical continuing coverage for medical reasons, for anything there with insurance and you want to reach out to them. I'm happy to assist and do an enrollment sooner versus later so that you can call them and have that conversation with them. Once you are enrolled, you will receive an email from CISI, not from me, not from the study abroad office, but from CISI. That enrollment or welcome package email, I should call it, will contain an electronic insurance ID card. It will also have the policy brochure, so that's available for you to take a look at. It will also have a claim form. So I think it's always important to review that claim form. It's very straightforward. Um, but again, chances are very high that you are going to have to submit a claim form at some point during your year there. And so make sure you know and understand that. Do your research, know how to fill that out so that, it's not overwhelming in an emergency type of situation or shortly thereafter. And then in addition to that, they're going to provide to you not only the link for downloading this My CISI Traveler app, which is important to have on your phone, but also creating what's called a My CISI login. So that gives you the ability to go on a tablet or a computer on a much larger screen, right, and be able to access all these important features that they offer up. But the CISI Traveler app, as I'll talk about here shortly, is really important because you want that you always have your phone on hand with you. So you want to make sure that you're familiar with that app and what it offers. So, as we mentioned, Marley mentioned this before, on the back of the electronic card that you'll receive, you're going to see here that AXA assistance number right here. And so I like to point that out. I like to give a visual. This card is accessible on that My CISI app. So if you are in an emergency situation, you can pull that up and you can look for that phone number there on the back of that ID card and you can call and get some guidance as to what you need to do for medical care. In addition to that, you'll see it'll have your name, it'll have your dates of coverage, things like that. So I think that's important to be able to know and recognize that early before you're in that situation. The next thing I'm going to show you here is the actual app itself. So these are some pictures and screenshots of the app. And as you'll see, there are lots of things in here that are accessible to you. You'll be able to search for those medical providers that Marley mentioned. They can be preferred or non-preferred. You may want to specify that you want an English speaking doctor. You can look for that. You might want to access some of those insurance documents, such as that claim form. You might not remember where to find that, but it's on your app. You can go through there. It also will give you information or links to like embassies and other websites. So lots of really helpful information. And so again, like I said, you're going to have a lot of apps, a lot of registration, but do your research. Go and look at these things, download them before you go so that you're familiar and you can navigate through everything prior to your departure in Rome. In addition to that, this is a visual of what that CISI portal looks like. So if you are not comfortable looking, and sometimes it's a little small on your phone, but you need to do some search for doctors, you might have an ear infection. You can look for it on your phone if you're comfortable, but if you want to jump on the portal on a computer, the same information is accessible here as well. You can look on here as well if you are changing your itinerary. Let's say you are staying a little bit longer. You have the ability to go into the CISI app and extend your coverage at your cost if you're going to stay later than the end date of the program. Also, if you're looking for information and you're doing that weekend travel in a different country, this is a great spot as well to go in there and look for any information on a specific doctor for that area. So now let's talk about arrival in Rome. This, I want to make sure that you are aware of what that's going to look like when you are coming off of the plane. So, I want to make sure that you're aware that there are no staff members on site at the airport. You will be navigating this on your own. So, if you are landing at the FCO airport in Rome, you will navigate to customs. You'll depart from the plane, you'll go through customs, you'll then go through baggage claim, and then you'll look for the signs for the taxi stands or queues is what they call them. You will be looking for these licensed taxis. They are typically yellow or white cabs identified by a number shield on the side of their vehicle. And at that point, I always tell students have on a piece of paper or on a business card the address for the Rome Center because you might be a little groggy, jet lagged, your phone might not be working right away when you get off the plane, and you're going to go, oh my goodness, what's the address to the John Felice Rome Center? So I always tell students write it down so that you can easily pull it out of your pocket or your carry-on and say, this is where I'm going, and the taxi driver will take you there. Just be mindful that the ride from FCO to campus is about a 35-minute drive. You'll do some highway driving and then you'll be on some side streets going up and down and around. You're gonna be like, where are they taking me? Keeping in mind that the Rome Center is located in a Roman neighborhood, so it's tucked away a little bit, which is nice. So you will get there in that 30 to 35-minute drive. Sometimes students may connect and share if they're on the same flight. They may share a taxi to kind of cut down on costs. Just so that you're aware, the average cost for a taxi from the airport to campus is about 90 euros. So most of the cabs, they'll use a card or tap, but it's always good to have a little bit of some cash as well if you prefer to pay that way. And we'll talk about that a little bit later too. And then once you're on campus, you will begin that check-in and move-in process with the team. And so that check-in, you are going to go to the front desk there and they will direct you to the check-in location where you'll receive your room keys and other important information. Then you'll be guided to where your room is. You'll start unpacking, getting things ready, lots of excitement going on. And then later in the afternoon on that arrival day, there will be floor meetings and group dinners and things like that. So keep in mind that first day is going to be a little up and down. There's people coming in the morning, the afternoon, later in the evening. There is no kind of set time. We try to say anywhere between 9 and 5 is a good time to get there. A lot of students usually arrive in the morning and come onto campus. Some arrive earlier just to acclimate to time and such. And so they'll be there right at 9 a.m. Whatever works for you. And then just be aware that the next few days will be orientation meetings, academic presentations, orientation trips, and workshops, and those are all mandatory. So I'm going to now pass it over to Adam Schilling, and he can talk to you more about the Rome campus and student life.
Thank you very much, Alana.
Of course.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Loyola. I'm going to be talking about some things to expect on campus in Rome, and then some of the student life things there, and then some more academic stuff later on. So the people that you're going to be spending a lot of time with and hanging out with in Rome on the ground are these five folks here, led by Jack Spittle, who is a graduate of Marquette and did a semester at the Rome Center, has been in Rome for many, many years, along with Simone, Amir, Alexa, and Alicia. So these are the people that you'll be talking to about which neighborhood to go visit for this and that, what cool things to see in the countryside and other countries in Europe. So these are good people to rely on and kind of get to know a little bit better. Next. So something you'll do coming up here as we go into the early hours or the early months of the summer is get your housing assignments from that student life team in Rome. They're going to take all the things that you enter into the Mercury system, which is within your Locus account. Like if you know someone that's also going, you can choose to live with that person, or you can just go random. So they're going to be handling all that and actually sending out those housing assignments to you. So you'll be notified of like who your roommate is and where you'll be living, probably in July by that student life team. And everyone will be living in new rooms. Sorry, Alana. Everybody will be
That's okay.
living in new rooms, with air conditioning, private bathrooms in the rooms, and they're all doubles. And those two pictures there are from those rooms, so you can kind of get a sense of what you'll be looking at. And then next slide, we have Luca Bedetti, who is going to be someone you'll be very familiar with, who is just answering a couple
I think it's a
questions
tendency
for
and
you.
understandable to, when students come, they notice things that are different uh, from their culture and from the way they do things. So food, language, transportation, architecture, etc. But I also encourage students, I would also encourage students to focus also on the similarities they find. Because, sure, we are all different, but we also have a shared humanity, which, can also help people feel that not only is our diversity a richness, but also our shared humanity is something that can help us feel that we belong, even regardless of where we are in the world.
So that's Luca. You'll be getting to know Luca very well. And then this is another person you're going to meet, which is
We'll
Carla,
probably
who
hear the
is the
word
assistant.
Prego.
Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead, Adam.
Carla is the academic dean there. So you'll get to know her, and I'll talk a little bit about when you'll be meeting her in a bit. But she has a important lesson on the use of the word prego.
Thrown around a lot when you come to Rome. Prego kind of has a dual meaning. Prego means you're welcome. So if you say grazie, thank you to somebody, they'll probably say prego because it means you're welcome. But prego has another meaning, hidden meaning, which actually means kind of please. So someone might open the door for you and they will say prego. Or your waiter might come to the table and they might say prego. It's a way of saying, please share with me. So it doesn't always just mean you're welcome. There's another meaning there too. And it's someone usually who's waiting to sort of help you, prego. Very polite.
I believe it won't be a word, but
Keep going. Sorry, Amir. Here's where you are in Balduina. So this is a map of the neighborhoods you'll be living in for the year in Rome. That little house right there in the top left is the actual campus. It's kind of tucked away back in this very scenic area of Balduina. But as you can see, even though we're not like right in the city center, there are tons of things to do in Balduina. Coffee shops, restaurants, gelato, even just kind of like mundane things like your supermarkets, or banks and things like that. It's a nice short walk down the hill to the metro stop if you're going to take the train into the city or out to a different Italian, into Rome or to another Italian city. And then there's those two bus stops there that are highlighted that Alana's kind of going over, the 990 and the 913. And those are going to be your main routes from the Rome campus into the city center. Next, we'll talk a little bit about some of the resources that are there in Rome. Probably skip that bad boy. You'll see enough of the campus when you're there. So first things, what are you going to eat on campus? You'll all have access to the cafeteria, which they call the Mensa. This is going to provide your lunch and dinner throughout the year. So they'll be open for those periods of the day. They'll be closed for certain breaks, and they'll always have those dates posted so you can know ahead of time. This is provided by an Italian company, and it's going to have a ton of options for you. Not necessarily traditional American dining hall food, but more of an Italian take on it. So you'll have lots of good options. Everything is going to be labeled in English. So if you have any dietary restrictions, you'll know what to indulge in or steer clear of. And if there's anything like you absolutely can't have, or even you want specialty made, you can just ask and they'll usually be able to accommodate you. Right down the hall from the dining hall is Ronaldo's, which is actually that bottom left picture right there. There's an indoor and an outdoor. That is a cafe. That's kind of a meeting spot on campus. You'll be able to get breakfast there, which is like a little pastry and espresso, and some other treats, and they'll have things throughout the day. So Ronaldo's is also going to be a good place for you to spend some time and chat with your friends. And this is a view of the dining hall. The Mensa, as you can see, also has indoor outdoor. You're going to be getting a lot of nice weather while you're in Rome, so you'll have some outdoor dining. Life on campus is very rich. There's a lot of things for you to do. There's a lot of amenities provided for you that are very identical to an American style campus. It's a 24-hour gated campus, so you have to scan your ID to get into the front gate. So everyone who's on campus should be there. There's laundry rooms in the main wing that has a washer and dryer. You can use those whenever. There's sheets, towel and pillowcase exchange every Tuesday, so you can get fresh sheets every week. We'll have our gym open throughout the rest of the day. You can have 2 guests in your room during those hours, but no overnight guests and no like your friend, sibling, cousin's brother, whatever from the United States can come and like spend the night with you. It's got to be people on campus. And we'll have mass on Sundays at 8 p.m. in the evening. Some visuals of our gym, and it's a little bit bigger than you might think, but we'll have a gym there and then our laundry room as well. Now with academics and some of the info that's pertinent to you as Rome Start students. So you were all doing your first year here in Rome. As you already know, you're all majoring in different things and you're all going to Rome and tracking well to graduate in 4 years while doing that. The only thing you'll be taking for sure at some point is Italian 101, but the rest of the time you're doing 12 to 15 credit hour semester schedules, and you're doing it on a Monday through Thursday schedule. So in Rome, there are no classes on Fridays. You'll have a couple, and by a couple, I mean literally 2 a semester where you have to be on campus for Fridays for classes, but the rest of those weeks you are doing Monday through Thursday for your classes. The classes at the Rome Center are primarily focused towards core. There'll be usually about 60 plus offerings in that regard. But you'll also, depending on your major, be able to find some certain classes that might fit into your major at the introductory level or a little bit higher level. You'll register for all of those through Locus, so you'll get familiar with that process while you're in Rome, and that's the same process you're going to do to register for classes when you get back to Chicago. 2 really important things to highlight here. One is the faculty there. These are all Loyola professors, but they are majority European in origin, with a couple of American expats who have been over there for a while. So you'll have those international faculty while you're in Rome, and a good chunk of the courses you have the chance to take while you're in Rome are what we call on-site courses. So they're doing things like every class session is at a museum or somewhere downtown in churches, or visiting the Vatican. So if you can, if it fits your schedule, I highly recommend you take at least one on-site course while you're there throughout the year. So this is where this is going to be kind of specific to you all as Rome Start students. So you're actually going to get some outreach from Carla, who you saw earlier, who's the Assistant Dean of Academics there, usually in May, to Zoom with you in June. And you're going to talk about a couple of things related to course registration, your fall schedule, the specific Rome Center curriculum there, and some things that are going to be specific to your majors or any minors you might want to do. That's also what you're talk about, like if you are bringing in AP or there's IB or like dual enrollment credits into your Loyola career, you'll have that. And as well as you'll have some familiarity with Locus up before you meet with Carla. But you'll talk about Sakai, which is kind of like our like hosting site for your classes and things like that. And then you'll learn about like any sort of learning accommodations that we offer at different advising hours. So Carla will be on the ground with you there in Rome, but she's going to meet with you a little bit earlier in the summer to kind of go over your class schedule and everything, so you're all squared away. The core curriculum is really prevalent at the Rome Center. This helps us bring in students from all different kinds of majors. Like I mentioned, a lot of you are probably going to be taking the core curriculum. You might have heard this if you talked to Joe or Jen, but the core curriculum is a third of your total Loyola academic career. So it's something you're going to be doing a lot of in your 4 years, and you can do a good chunk of it while you're in Rome. So that those 2 columns kind of break down the different knowledge areas that you are going to have 2 courses in or just one. So your art core, for example, is a great one to do while you're in Rome. There's a couple of great options that are on site, and going to get you that art core in a way better way than you'll ever be able to find here in Chicago. And when you get these slides, you'll actually be able to go and see where the core curriculum lives and all the different courses associated with it. And these are some notes from Carla, things to kind of consider. I mentioned those 2 Friday class days you'll have during the semester are right there. So you can plan them ahead of time, put them in your schedule. We also have an academic calendar that is up to date. So you can go right now and see the entire fall academic calendar when your like fall break is and Thanksgiving break and all that good stuff. And Alana mentioned this for the arrival, but make sure you're not going immediately to Barcelona on September 15th for your orientation day trip. We want you there with the rest of the group, not just your fellow Rome starters, but the entire cohort of people students going to Rome in the fall. There so you can kind of all meet and mingle with each other. Carla really loves us to mention this, and I agree with her. Try not to book travel ahead of arriving in Rome, especially before you know when your quizzes and exams are. They're really hard to reschedule. And you just be smart and not like have travel that conflicts with that. So once you get in Rome, you can start planning out your kind of trips, different countries and cities you want to visit from there. And as Rome starts students, you're doing sort of a full year academic program. You're not just learning through the courses you take, but also your social engagement. And you're all doing this full year abroad. So you're doing a really, really unique program that has a very international kind of mindset in its like conception and day-to-day life. So that that University 101 kind of thing that acclimates you to the college life in Loyola, that'll be helping you adjust both to your university life in general and your life in Rome. There'll be a couple of different academic programs that Luca will spearhead. And this is really something that he emphasized to me when we chatted a couple months ago, is the Rome Star cohort is a really great community. You get individual support with Carla, with Luca, but you all are there together and you're doing this together. So you'll have a ton of outings, different activities, and you're all doing different majors. You're not all like classics majors or something like that. So you're all in this together, but have very different perspectives and backgrounds, and you're bringing those things to the table. Actually, Joe mentioned this in the chat, but Alexia, who is on the student life team, was a Rome Start student. So you have someone there that's on the student life team that has been in your shoes and could be a really great resource for helping you out if you're excited or worried about different aspects of it. Luca's going to reach out to you at the beginning of each semester to kind of go over things with sort of an orientation for you as a Rome Start student. So be on the lookout for that from Luca. And then once you finish, you get through the whole year, you'll get a certificate that is kind of signifying your completion of the Rome Start Global Scholars cohort. You're going to do a couple of cool things along with this. So we have some highlighted here that Luca wanted us to mention, like visiting Save the Children Italia, doing cooking classes, movie nights. We just did the Earth Day event last week, actually, over there. So you'll be doing with that. You'll have your day of reflection retreat, and you'll have your end of year weekend trip too. So I know Luca, I think he switches up where you go, so you'll have to see where you go. Switching gears totally to cost. So all of your cost information and your awards and scholarships and things you get will all be present in Locus in your e-bill. So you can see when those will be generated. For your fall semester, you're going to be generated July 15th, and it's due August 5th. This gives a pretty general breakdown of all the charges that will be on there. These are all billed by Loyola, and they don't include any of the scholarships or financial aid you might be receiving too, so keep that in mind. Same with spring. Go ahead, Alana. Sorry. And then those scholarships too. So those awards that you received in your admission letter, those Loyola Merit Awards, those are automatically going to apply for your full year in Rome as part of the Rome Start group. Same with your financial aid through the FAFSA. But the thing I want to highlight here is there are Rome Center specific scholarships that you actually can apply for for your second semester. So you can go ahead and do that as well, and that will help reduce the cost of that semester even further. You also have the opportunity to apply for the Gilman Scholarship, which is a very competitive award, but people on the ground in Rome, and then us here in the study abroad office who would be happy to like Zoom with you and chat with you, who are readers for the Gilman, and have like helped students get there before. That can be a really great award for you to get as a study abroad student. That's a $5,000, I believe, for the semester.
All
Okay, I think I
right.
kick it back to you, Alana.
Okay, sounds good. So we're going to talk quickly through a couple things in preparing you for study abroad. One of the things that we want to make sure is that you make copies of the documents and you keep those copies on your phone. That would be like your valid passport and student visa. Not only are you physically going to have them with you, but make copies of that. Put it into your phone, up to the iCloud. Your stamped acceptance letter from the consulate. Make sure you're bringing that with you to Italy, along with any additional copies that we outline, and we'll talk to you a little bit more about that. It's on our website. Make sure that you're bringing those copies with you as well. Your declaration of presence form, your driver's license and state ID, bring that with you as well. Credit card, debit cards, insurance cards, important medical. So physical parts you're going to bring with you, but also make copies and maybe give a set of copies to your parents or guardians at home here, and then bring have the other ones in the cloud, things like that, so that you have quick access to that should something be lost or stolen. In addition to that, I want to talk about briefly some carry-on and personal items. What to pack in your carry-on and personal item bag. We always say pack anything that you are not willing to lose. So make sure you have that wallet and IDs, passports, as I talked about, airline ticket, whether that's physical or on your phone, copies of your documents that we just talked about. Put that in your online or carry-on personal item bag. You're going to bring your cell phone, charging cord, earbuds or headphones, extra change of clothes, because sometimes luggage may get lost. Let's hope not, or it might be delayed. So it's nice to have an extra set of clothing when you come off that plane. If something should happen, you have something there. Any toiletries, and make sure that they are airline regulation. When you get off that plane, you might want to brush your teeth or midway through that flight, things like that. I always say bring any prescriptions or medicines with you. Do not pack them in your checked-in bags. Make sure that you pack them in your carry-on or personal items. That is important as well. So packing tips and other tips. Clothing. I always tell students, you're going to pack, lay it all out, and then you're going to remove about half of that. So bring the basics. Check online for the climate during your time of stay. Reminder, there are some more modest dress that is required, like to enter churches. So, if you're wearing a dress, it's got to be past the knees, or you have to have a shawl over your shoulders. Um, Bring comfortable shoes. Don't overpack. Check the weight limits. Make sure you know you're aware. You're going to be buying things when you're there in Rome. So just again, bring the basics. The Rome Center, make sure you have the correct outlet. It's an EU standard plug-in type. You can go on Amazon and obtain that. You can get a universal plug-in type, things like that. Again, the Rome Center will provide you sheets, pillowcases, and pillows for your bed, and you can change that weekly, get fresh ones. But if you like that fuzzy blanket, either bring one with you or you can purchase one while you're in Rome. Just be aware of that. You can bring your laptops, but there are computers on site, so that's your choice as to what you want to do. Class supplies, they can be purchased at a local neighborhood store, so don't be putting tons of paper and pens all into your check-in bag and adding to that weight. Things are available there. You can use Amazon, Italian Amazon, and things can be ordered. One thing I would always like to point out is don't ship anything. You don't have if you have large boxes or technology or pharmaceutical products shipped to you in Rome, I would not do that. There are hefty taxes that you have to pay for that when they arrive in Italy. So be mindful of that, so that you know that you're not doing that. Um, Let's talk about airport departures and arrivals. As I mentioned, check the TSA website for prohibited items. You may want to have a TSA lock. You might, don't forget to check in online. Arrive 2 to 3 hours early for your international flight. For some of you, you may have traveled internationally before. For some of you, this may be your first time. So make sure that you're checking in online. I think it might be 24 hours before your departure. Make sure you're arriving to the airport early. Don't leave your luggage unattended. Wear easily removable shoes and comfortable clothing. Bring reusable water bottles that you can fill up after you get through security. Don't wear a belt. Wear layers. I always say sometimes planes are hot, sometimes they're cold. It depends upon the airplane, right? So wear those layers that you can take on and off. Have your boarding passes and passports readily available. Don't have them buried at the bottom of your backpack. Stay close to your gate. And sleep on the plane. I think that's important. Try to do that if you can. I know students sometimes get really excited and all the nerves are going, but try to get some rest if you're able to while you're on that plane. Money matters. I always say it's important. Contact your bank and credit card companies. Let them know of your travel plans. Have some debit or credit cards that, some of them may not be accepted everywhere. So again, do your research. Know what's acceptable, what's not. Know if there's foreign transaction fees. Look for those credit cards that may not have those. Sometimes parents will issue a credit card to their students and say, use this for an emergency only kind of situation. That's a conversation you should have with your family. Most of Europe uses the tap, but some of those smaller towns, if you're traveling, may not have that. So again, have some money accessible. There's an ATM on site, and there are ATMs throughout the city, so you can take money out. But again, do your research. Know if there's any extra fees associated with using those cards or taking money out and what that might be. Some things in Europe, such as water or public bathrooms, cost money. So be aware of that, so that you're not in a situation where you're going, oh my goodness, do I have some coins on me to use the public bathroom? Just be aware of that. Again, do research. Most credit cards are accepted at grocery stores, restaurants, shops in the larger cities. But as I said, you might need some cash at some of those smaller restaurants or local shops. I always tell students to take money out in the local currency before your departure. A lot of students ask how much. I would say like $200 or $300, not a large amount, but just have something accessible before you depart. Like I said, if you have to use that in the taxi or something like that. Um, don't carry all of your cards and cash in one place. Kind of leave it, leave something back at the dorm if you're going out for the evening and say, oh, I'm only going to take cash tonight or part of it, or I'm only going to take a card. Don't put everything in one spot. Be smart about that and make sure that you have it in multiple places and access to multiple things for cash. A big one is communication. Call your loved ones when you arrive. Set up some sort of communication plan before you leave. You're going to want to explore with your mobile phone an international plan with your current carrier. Determine if that's the best route, or if you are going to use an Italian SIM card, which you may purchase at a local. And again, it depends upon your phone and what year generation it is. There's eSIMs. Those are always really accessible and seem to work out really nicely for students. Some of those apps include for those eSIMs, Nomad, Ola Fly, Airlo, GigSky, and the other one. So again, do some of your research as to what works best for you. And then the next thing I kind of go over is just the next steps. Review your post-decision requirements in your Go Global application portal. Some of you may already be in there, some of you may not. When you do get into there are requirements and they are time sensitive. So make sure you are reviewing those and giving them the attention that's needed. Visit your doctor and talk about prescriptions and any on-site treatments, plans, things that you need to do. That might be be, like I said, reaching out to the insurance, CISI insurance, and having something set up ahead of time. Make copies of those important documents, leave with a family member, put it into the iCloud. Read all the pre-departure materials that is provided. You're going to get a lot of emails from a lot of different people. I know it's going to be a lot coming at you, but you need to take the time to read those because all of it has very important information. And then just, have fun, be ready for it, do your research, follow them, follow the Rome Center on Instagram. That's a great way to kind of see a little bit more about the campus and, get a feel of what that's going to look like. So that kind of really wraps it up. I know we gave you a lot of information. Again, we'll send these slides out with the links and the recordings and things like that. Feel free to reach out to myself. I put my contact information in the chat. I'm happy to help you, walk you through all the visa stuff. I'm happy to help with any questions you have about the Rome Center, things like that. So with that being said, I'm going to stop the recording and sharing. And then if you have any questions, this is the opportunity to ask away. There you go.